Hi, my name is Makafui and I welcome you to the first official reading session on the Speak Right online learning channel. What are we reading today? Today we are reading one of the old African writers' classics. Okay, so I have here with me Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Things Fall Apart. This book was published in 1958 and it's one of the oldest African stories we've had so far. As recorded in history, the title of this book was taken from a popular poem in those days by an Irish poet, W.B. Yeats. And this is an extract from that poem from which the title of our book was derived. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. So if you didn't know, this is where Things Fall Apart got its title from. Alright, so let's start reading part 1, chapter 1. Okonkwo was well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. His fame rested on solid personal achievement. As a young man of 18, he had brought honor to his village by throwing Amalinze the cat. Amalinze was the great wrestler who for 7 years was unbeaten, from Umuofia to Mbaino. He was called the cat because his back would never touch the earth. It was this man that Okonkwo threw in a fight which the old men agreed was one of the fiercest since the founder of the Earth village engaged a spirit of the wild for 7 days and 7 nights. The drums beat and the flutes sang, and the spectators held their breath. Amalinze was a wily craftsman, but Okonkwo was as slippery as a fish in water. Every nerve and every muscle stood out on their arms, on their backs and their thighs, and one almost had them stretching to breaking point. In the end, Okonkwo threw the cat. That was many years ago, 20 years or more. And during this time, Okonkwo's fame had grown like a bushfire in the Hamatan. He was tall and huge, and his bushy eyebrows and wide nose gave him a very severe look. He breathed heavily, and it was said that when he slept, his wives and children in their outhouses could hear him breathe. When he walked, his heels hardly touched the ground, and he seemed to walk on springs, as if he was going to pounce on somebody. And he did pounce on people quite often. He had a slight stammer, and whenever he was angry and could not get his words out quickly, he would use his fists. He had no patience with unsuccessful men. He had no patience with his father. Unoka, for that was his father's name, had died 10 years ago. In his day, he was lazy and improvident and was quite incapable of thinking about tomorrow. If any money came his way, and it seldom did, he immediately bought gourds of palm wine, called round his neighbors and made merry. He always said that whenever he saw a dead man's mouth, he saw the folly of not eating what one had in one's lifetime. Unoka was, of course, a debtor, and he owed every neighbor some money, from a few cowries to quite substantial amounts. He was tall but very thin and had a slight stoop. He wore a haggard and mournful look except when he was drinking or playing on his flute. He was very good on his flute, and his happiest moments were the 2 or 3 moons after the harvest, when the village musicians brought down their instruments hung above the fireplace. Unoka would play with them, his face beaming with blessedness and peace. Sometimes another village would ask Unoka's band and their dancing egugu to come and stay with them and teach them their tunes. They would go to such hosts for as long as 3 or 4 markets, making music and feasting. Unoka loved the good fare and the good fellowship, and he loved this season of the year, when the rains had stopped and the sun rose every morning with dazzling beauty. And it was not too hot either, because the cold and dry Harmattan wind was blowing down from the north. Some years the Harmattan was very severe and a dense haze hung on the atmosphere. Old men and children would then sit round log fires warming their bodies. Unoka loved it all, and he loved the fair skies that returned with the dry season, and the children who sang songs of welcome to them. He would remember a kite sailing leisurely against the blue sky. As soon as he found one, he would sing with his whole being, welcoming it back from its long, long journey and asking if it had brought home any lengths of cloth. All right, that's it for today. Catch you in the next session as we continue this first chapter of the first part of Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart.